Hi everyone, welcome to day 18 of SQL Fundamentals. Today we are going to talk about transactions in SQL. So before I deep dive into transactions, begin, rollback, all commit, right? I just wanted to take few minutes talking about asset property. So what is asset property? So if you have to call SQL Server as a database, right? It has to follow asset property, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation and durability. So what is atomicity? All operations in a transaction completes fully or not at all. That means when you think about a banking as an example, right? Like when you withdraw a money, there will be so many changes happen. Like there might be entry that says that okay, this person withdrew a money at this time. And there will be an update in your balance saying that okay, you are like 1 lakh reduced to 90,000, right? So what if it failed in between? Like your transaction happened, balance didn't update, right? So that there is an inconsistency. But when you say that if it is a database, it has to do all the transaction as one unit and everything should complete or nothing. Like either like both the transaction which I mentioned should happen or nothing should happen. So that is what atomicity say. It has to see at like 1 or 0 or like kind of one unit of activity. And consistency is like um, database remain valid after before and after the transaction. That means like when you retrieve a data, right? Before I insert I got a value, after I insert I got a value. So this has to be consistent. When you use a transaction, that value, like there's some term called garbage value. So those kind of things should not be there. And we have isolation that like it since it is a server, right? So many people would be accessing the database at the same time. So there should be like it shouldn't be like okay, you are inserting, mine should be blocked. Those kind of scenarios should be handled well. And durability is like if I committed, or maybe on a simple term we can use save, when I like store a data, it should be there. It shouldn't be like okay, there is a power failure, my data is gone. So this kind of scenario should not happen. So that is what an asset property. So when you have an asset property, you can believe okay, this is a system which you can trust. Like we have logging and we have isolation level in different level which we can set in the database to take care of durability, isolation. And when it comes to transaction, so transactions are taking care of atomicity and consistency. These are the two things which is handled by transactions. Okay. So in order to implement a transaction, we have like begin tran, which help you to initiate a transaction, and rollback trans, which help you to cancel a transaction which is begin, and commit trans that help you to store the data permanently in the database using the commit command. If you are using a begin tran, you have to use commit tran. Don't worry about like reading this statement, like we'll be going to the practical session in few minutes. So save point is something which help you to save the transaction until a period, and you can either continue from there or you can roll back out. So this is what we are going to cover today. And on a fundamental, transactions are helping you to keep the consistency and atomicity in a database. Okay, moving on to our query window. Yeah, I have created a table called accounts. There's an account ID, account holder name and balance. And I also have inserted two values like John and Jane. So what I'm going to do is like John is planning to transfer 1,000 rupees or dollar to second person. Who has a second person? Jane. John is going to say 1,000 rupees to Jane. So this is account balance, right? So that means like this 5,000 should reduce to 4,000 and 3,000 should be increased to 4,000. So here what we need to ensure is like okay, John sends the money. That means we need to reduce the money from John's account and Jane gets the money. So we need to add the money into Jane's account. As I said in our like consistency part, right? Either both of this activity should happen because transaction had happened, so money should go. Otherwise, both should not happen. There shouldn't be any case like, okay, John's account balance is 4,000 and Jane is 3,000. That means like John sent the money, but Jane didn't receive the money, right? There might be some cases because these are like all insert, update, delete statements, right? You may run into issues. So transactions would help you to identify the errors and cancel the activity which you did. That is what we are going to learn with the transactions. So yeah, begin transaction, which help you to start a transaction. Okay, so anything when you write inside a begin, right, you have started a begin. So anything you run after this begin will be under this transaction. So unless and until you write a commit statement, nothing is going to store permanently. So when I say permanently, right, if you are going to write a select statement from the accounts table, if you have to see that changes reflected in your next select statement, this should be committed. So if there is a begin transaction, there should either be a commit or rollback. So when you use transaction, keep this in mind. You should have commit or rollback should be there at the end of the query, so that like either the changes would be saved or the changes would be reverted back. Okay. So what, before we go deep, right, like if I just run this code, so how this work? So this is one line of statement, and you are just running this thing. So if this query fails, it fails and reverted back. You don't need to, if it is a single line of statement, and transactions are required for insert, update, delete, right? You don't need to do it for select, because when there is a change in data and you wanted to keep a consistency in terms of failure, there is where the transaction coming into picture. So if it is just one statement, you don't need to use transaction, because transaction required when you have multiple statements and they have to act as a single unit of action. Here in our statement, we want the changes should reflect in both the places or nothing should happen. So that is why I have a requirement of transaction in this particular query. Okay. So here I have this account ID 1 John. So what we did, we are deducting 1,000 rupees from John's account. So we did it. Great. So let me do this one by one. I ran that. So I can run this part by part, unlike this thing. So now there is a transaction opened. I'm careful about that. Now the next statement, I'm adding 1,000 rupees to Jane's account. I did it. Great. So there is no error, right? So then what I am checking here in my condition is like, is there any error? At error, I think we discussed about it, is a global variable which returns if there is an error. At error is going to be not equal to 0. So there is no error. This will commit the transaction. Changes will happen. If there is an error, it will roll back the transaction. Transaction failed. So let me run this code. So transaction is successful. That means like there were no error. Right. So this is a system level activity which we did, right? So think I wanted to do this activity manually. So I have this account. So if you think he doesn't have balance, right? That can be a scenario. So what you can do, select balance from accounts where if balance is less than, let us keep it 4,000, right? Because we already did, so his balance should be 4,000. If this is going 4,000, I don't want this action to be done. So what I can do, I can say I'll declare a variable here. I can do that here. Declare at b, because I'm only going to store 1 or 0. I'm saying by default this is 0, and I'm setting a variable as 1. So I'm saying like if after this activity, if my account balance is less than 4000, then I wanted to set error flag as 1, and either I can skip this transaction or I can check, okay, if the error is 0, you commit, but error is 1, I want this to be rolled back. So previously it was depending upon system, but here I am applying a business logic on the same code and saying my system, okay, let us check the balance. This can be anything, right? If you think like he is trying to transfer this to an account ID 2, right? So here I can check, do we have this account ID exist? If not, set the error as 1. So even if you run an update statement or whatever, at the end of the code it will roll back. So let us try running this code and see. I'm trying begin the transaction. I ran this, so you can read it very clearly. Transaction is failed. So transaction failed in the sense it went here because my error flag was 1, right? So it did not allow the transaction. So as per our activity, what we did, we had done 1 successful transaction and 2 failed transactions, right? Or 1 failed transaction. So here now John's account is 4000 and Jane's account is 4000. We can do many, like whatever I have written is just a basic condition. You can do anything, whatever you think as a check, right? Like whatever the business application you wanted to apply on top of it, you can do it. And you might be able to do this condition even before update, and you can set the values, or you can even skip this transaction. We can do many things, but I have taken this example just for you to say you don't need to always depend upon a system variable to like commit or roll back the transaction. We have error handling using try catch, which we will be talking in next session, but I just wanted to know that there is a basic way where you can do this commit and transactions. One thing which I want all of you to remember, the purpose of the transactions are when you have to do multiple transaction, they are related, right? Otherwise like you don't, or like you have a scenario where you have a transactions are happening and based on some condition you wanted to roll back the transaction. So these are the cases where you have to use transaction. Okay, so now I have this code which is there with SAVEPOINT, this with the same data set I have created. So here what I'm doing from my side is like I'm updating the same account balance and I'm setting a save point. So what is save point? Save point is you have like these 2-3 statements, and you wanted to say that, okay, when I roll back, let's roll back only until a certain point, right? Or let me use that. So you can either create multiple transactions, or you can create save point inside a transaction that help you to roll back at the right point. So here this is not an exact example, but this will help you to understand how it is working. So here I have updated the same example, right? I have updated the balance. I created a save point called save point 1. Then I updated the balance, and I have an error occurred bit as 0. And if the balance of this account is less than 0, right, print insufficient fund and roll him back to save point 1. Then you can see rollback transaction to save point. In normal case, we only write rollback. Then this entire statement is going to get rolled back, right? This update statement and this update statement is going to get rolled back. But here in this case, I said, okay, rollback, but only until the save point 1. So there, in this case, this is only rollback until here, and I'm passing an error occurred flag as 1, then it, here I am coming again and checking, okay, uh, error occurred flag is 0, then commit the transaction. That means like there were no error happened. And if error occurred like flag is 1, it is transaction failed, because this is the condition. That is why this look on a logic wise, this look little tricky, and this may not be a perfect example to help you out, but we will take one save point example if we have time in our try catch session. But only understand this particular scenario is that save point will help you to roll back your code until certain step of your transaction, maybe until first step, second step, third step, right? You can set the save point anywhere, and based on the condition of changes, right, you will be able to roll back the transaction. So now it is rolled back until here. Still there is a transaction opened and this query is still valid and open. So you either need to commit or roll back. So if you are committing, only this update would change here. If it is going through this if condition, whatever you are committing, that condition just before the save point is going to get saved. So in like keep this two items in mind. One, when you have to use a transaction, and second thing, until the transaction, if there is transaction begin, until you commit, we cannot guarantee the data is stored. Based on the condition, data can be reverted, the table will go into the older state. So in order to keep that consistency, right, we have isolation level set in databases. So those isolation level define like, okay, how you have to, like, if you are creating a new query window and try to run a select statement, select star from accounts, sorry, yeah, I have 4,000 and 4,000. I begin a transaction and I ran this query, right? This transaction is initiated. Where is my code? I'm trying to retrieve the data. It is not even showing, right? You can see that it's trying to get that to record doesn't take so much time, right? Yeah, we have no log SQL statement. Okay, so this query is cancelled, and you get a value, right? You are getting John. Now I used a no-log. No-log means get me some value. I am least bothered about the quality of data. So that is where no-log coming into picture. So it's giving a 3,000 record. This can be right or wrong, right? Because until the transaction, so I have initiated the transaction. Now what I'm going to do, let me, where is my rollback statement? I'll just roll back this transaction. Now let's run this query. Okay, sorry. You can keep this no log or not, it's not a problem. Now you're getting 4,000. So there is no consistency, right? You saw a 3,000, and if you go back and track, you know, like no changes happened and you're showing 4,000. So in order to avoid these kind of consistencies, we have isolation level set in databases that we will be covering in the upcoming sessions. Okay. Okay, so that is all for today. So we have covered what is transaction, what is asset property. So we have asset property, normalization, and all these things. I haven't talked about anything in the initial part of the video. The reason is like we need to understand why all this theory exists when it comes to database and SQL. I don't want this to be covered as a topic of theory and make you confused. So like how we discussed about asset property today, we'll also be talking about normalization when we have the practical sessions coming on our way. Yeah, so thank you all. Hope this has helped you to get an understanding of transactions. So if you like the video, subscribe, and feel free to share with whomever you need it, and add any comments if you have any questions on this. Thank you.